very small proportion controlling a big chunk of the
There's a lot of leakage. What they collect does not end up in interest, and such that when you are budgeting, you don't inform.
Question asked on the issue of absorption. This is an issue that even for us is an issue of major concern. We have been engaging with our development partners on this particular issue because in some instances, some of the requirements they have make the whole process of procurement, tendering, evaluation, and ultimate disbursement very long and protracted. At the ministry, we have been engaging our development partners, especially, I think it's really largely the World Bank, AFD, European Development Bank. Let's talk about now the multilaterals, to try and see how we can simplify that whole process while still working within their own guidelines. They have guidelines which we must follow. They ultimately also have guidelines. We also need to be able to strengthen the capacity of line ministries to be able to follow those guidelines. And if we are to be totally frank with one another, there are also issues with line ministries because in some instances they themselves find that the procedure is too long and hence they would want to first and foremost take into account GOK funding because they think that that is a lot easier to disperse, but they don't want to go through the rigmarole of having to deal with the conditionalities imposed, but at the end of the day, they must be met. We are trying to simplify working with development partners because this is not an issue that is of, it is not particular to Kenya. Other countries are also finding themselves in a similar situation. And we are trying to work to see how those can be simplified. But ultimately, there will still be certain conditions that will be tied to the disbursements of those monies. We have to accept that we must find a working structure that will enable our ministries to absorb donor-funded disbursements at a much higher rate than they are currently. So this is also a problem, and we find it's a problem also at the Treasury, and we're trying to work to see how we can actually resolve this because we also believe it is impacting on our ability to deliver on our own Vision 2030 if we are not going to be able to increase the rate of absorption to a much higher rate than it's currently standing up now. We know, for example, in our universities there is the parallel costs. What is happening to this revenue? Why is it that every year, as you know, recently, we were under huge pressure despite the fact that it was not budgeted for, it was not passed, to the point that a lot of pressure was put on Treasury that unless we disburse this money, they are going on strike. This is money that wasn't budgeted for by the Ministry of Education. It was not in their budget, right? It was just dumped on us. And we told, hey, where does the money come from? So we would also like to see pressure being put also on our public universities to tell us where are these resources going? Why are you not able to stand on your own 2 feet? Why are you always going back to Treasury? What is happening to this revenue? That is a question that they also need to be able to tell us. Instead of allowing a situation to reach a critical stage, now because of the threat of strike, you want to involve the Prime Minister, you want to involve the whole government, forcing you to pay, but not addressing these issues that you are raising. So these are some of the questions that we have, and again, we believe Parliament should be able to play a strong role in helping us resolve some of these particular situations, because we also believe and we agree that there are indeed issues in terms of the amounts that we are supposed to raise.
The government is putting a very spirited effort in ensuring that resources are spent prudently. We have been given lengthy presentations by the Minister for Finance together with his officers and representatives of the Ministry of Finance. Of course, you all know when the budget policy statement was tabled, which copies you have read and analyzed. You know there has been underperformance in the way of collecting revenue by Kenya Revenue Authority. That has been a major concern for ourselves as a budget committee. But of course, the minister explains that has been occasioned by the global recession, which you also are aware. We also are very concerned about the continued borrowing domestically as well as from external, and that we have raised, and we are saying that there is continued need to cut on wasteful expenditures, especially on non-discretionary aspects. And those items we have been told now, 97% of what we correct. So we are asking if we shall continue to take our resources on wages, on pensions, on other current expenditures. When shall we get resources to invest for investments? When shall we jumpstart the economy? And you know, when we do that, it means that for development, we are needing to borrow. When you borrow from whatever sources, it also means you are increasing the debt. And this debt continues to be paid by future generations. So we are indeed very, very concerned.
This is the first time that we are actually discussing the budget policy statement with the minister. And our main focus was to look at the new way of budgeting since the passing of the Fiscal Management Act, which requires that the minister tables the policy statement. And the policy statement, in short, is a statement that shows the allocation of resources to the various sectors in the country. We know that the development of the nation is now anchored on Vision 2030, and the same has trickled to the ministries in terms of the strategic plans of the ministries. So we are expecting that the budgeting follows the strategic plans of the ministry,
right,
which is something that when we met with the various committees, parliamentary committees that deal with various sectors and various ministries, we found that it was clearingly lower than expected. The budgeting has not adhered to the strategic plans, and we've been impressing upon the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Planning that since we passed the Fiscal Management Act, we do not expect budgets to be incremental. We are expecting budgets to be radical in the way they plan, priorities to be set, and we want a targeting way of budgeting so that we enable the country to move from where we are to where we expect ourselves to be in 2030. That requires that the flagship projects that the Ministry of Planning had put in the Vision 2030 should be actually identified. They should be identified, and we should be able to implement the flagship projects that will deal with MDGs, projects that will deal with poverty, and projects that will take us closer to the Vision 2030. So those are some of the issues that we are raising, and we are telling the ministry, the two ministries, that they must start to relook at the way they are budgeting.
I must say it's a very good opportunity for Parliament to start engaging Treasury at this early hour in the year, so that we all move together on behalf of Kenyans, appreciating the difficulties that the Ministry of Treasury has to navigate through in bringing out the budget. It also was very clear to us about the performance of the budget in this financial year, where the issue of expenditure came out. And I think that we are engaging Treasury, we should be able to suggest ways and means of reducing expenditure, because we know Treasury is overstretched. All the money is allocated, 97.6% going to recurrent, leaving us with only 2.6%, and that is serious. So the other way of getting money into the development budget is to ensure that we make our recurrent expenditure much, much more efficient.